probably heard a lot about autism, but how much of it is actually true? As an autistic teen myself, and from years of research, I think I know a thing or two. So let me give you the ultimate guide to understanding autism. First of all, before I start throwing the word around, what even is autism? Autism is short for Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. It can also sometimes be referred to as Asperger syndrome, but I'll get into that later. Autism is a developmental disability that affects how a person thinks, feels, communicates, interacts with others, and experiences their environment. Autistic people may experience communication difficulties, sensory issues, strong interests, and have a different way of processing or expressing their emotions. In other, much simpler words, autism is a way that someone's brain functions differently and thinks or experiences things in a unique way. It can be both a positive and a negative thing. When referring to someone being autistic, there are a few ways you can say it. Number 1, autistic person. Number 2, person with autism. Number 3, suffering from autism. Or number 4, on the spectrum. I can tell you right now, please don't use suffering from autism for anyone. That just makes autism sound like some kind of disease, and it's a disability, not a disease. As for the other terms, most of the autistic community would prefer you to say autistic person rather than they have autism, because that makes autism sound like something you can catch, but it's a part of someone. In the end, it all comes down to the autistic person themselves as to how they would like to be referred to. Each person is different and has their own preferences. In this video, I'll mainly be using autistic person, but I'll be using a mix of language. Something important you should know, and probably the most important thing you should know when it comes to understanding autism, is that every autistic person is different. Autism is a spectrum. There are specific stereotypes, like that autistic people are only 4-year-old white boys who are obsessed with trains and flap their hands, or characters like Rain Man and Sheldon Cooper. But the truth is that anyone of any age, nationality, or gender can be on the autism spectrum. You can't be a little autistic. You're either autistic or you're not. But what makes a person autistic? Like I mentioned before, there are quite a few struggles and traits that autistic people possess, so I'll be going into them a little bit more in depth now. Communication can be a big oof for autistics. Some you meet may be non-verbal, meaning that they are unable to talk. Others may be semi-verbal and have limited speech, while others may be fully verbal and can communicate fluently like someone who's not autistic would. Being non-verbal or non-speaking does not mean that a person can't be intellectual. It also doesn't mean that a person can't communicate at all. There are actually quite a few alternative ways to communicate, like AAC devices, sign language, writing, typing, or sign language. But on the other hand, just because someone is fully verbal and speaking well doesn't mean that it's not a struggle for them. I'm fully verbal, but sometimes I go into a shutdown and lose my ability to speak. Many autistics that are fully verbal use those accommodations that I mentioned earlier because we struggle with communication in different ways. You know how your nose is there and you can see it, but your brain just blocks it up for you? Well, the average typical person's brain does that for all the sensory stimuli around them. But autistic brains struggle with that, so we get an overload of information. Our brain doesn't filter out all that sensory stimuli. That's why you may see an autistic person wearing ear defenders, headphones, sunglasses, earplugs, or some other kind of sensory accommodation. It can feel like every sound, touch, taste, and smell is all amplified. However, to contradict everything I literally just said, sometimes autistic people can be the exact opposite. There's hypersensitive, where everything feels amplified and too much. Then there's hyposensitive, where the autistic person craves that sensory input. These feelings can fluctuate and change throughout someone's life or even someone's day. You can be autistic and hate hugs, or you can be autistic and need to be squeezed constantly, or you can be autistic and be both at the exact same time, which might I add is very annoying. Let me just interrupt you real quick to teach you some words that will help you understand the autism community even more. Allistic means that a person is not autistic. They may still have a different neurotype from the average person, like ADHD or Tourette's, but it just includes anyone that isn't autistic. Neurotypical is an average typical brain, or what people refer to as normal. There isn't really a set normal, everyone's got their quirks and struggles, but this is just what is considered average. Neurodivergent is anyone that differs from that average. So autism, ADHD, tic disorders, and learning disabilities. So autism falls under the category of neurodivergent. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled program. Stimming is short for self-stimulatory behaviour. Essentially, movements like flapping your hands, playing with fidget toys, saying random words out of context, listening to the same song on repeat, spinning a pencil, blah blah blah, the list goes on. Everyone stims. Literally everyone. It's not just an autism thing, it's a human thing. Autistic people are known for stimming because we tend to do it in a bigger and louder way, and also need it to cope. There are numerous misconceptions out there that stimming is bad, but stimming is actually healthy. It's not just healthy, autistic people need stimming to cope. It helps us autistics process our emotions, cope with stress and overstimulation, and process information. Stimming is good. And to anyone that thinks it's bad or cringe, please leave. No, like literally, go leave. If you want to understand more about stimming, like the different types, more examples, or just truly understand it more, I have a whole video dedicated to it. Just a warning though, it's old and a bit cringy. Yes, I have the rights to call my own videos cringy. I won't remind you millions of times because I know that's annoying, so I'll just say it once. I have tons of autism and neurodiversity related videos on my YouTube channel. I have a whole playlist that you can go check out, so feel free to go explore. But remember, the older the videos are, the more therapy you'll need after watching how terrible they are. So feel free to go watch them, but don't blame me when you need bleach to wash out your eyes. A special interest is just how the name sounds. It's an interest that is really special to the person. Hyperfixations are also really similar, but they're usually shorter. Hyperfixations often occur in ADHD too. Both have equal intensity, but special interests tend to be longer, while hyperfixations are more short-lived. They are both different from regular interests because of the intensity. The way I like to think of it is that a hobby or interest is something that you enjoy doing, or that you enjoy in general. But a special interest or hyperfixation is something that takes up a lot of your brain space. It's like you can only focus on that one thing. Even if you're not necessarily good at that thing, you spend the majority of your time doing it, watching it, reading it, or thinking about it. When you're in that state, it's called hyperfocus, which is basically just focusing to a hyper extent. Like with everything, these have a good and a bad side. They can bring autistic people a lot of joy, but they can also distract them from daily life. If you couldn't already guess, mine is autism, psychology, and mental health. And some of my past interests you'll see are around my room in the background behind me. Meltdowns and shutdowns are heavily misunderstood. They happen when an autistic person is overwhelmed by something. Maybe too much sensory stimulation, things not being in routine, or other certain triggers. Meltdowns are more outward and include crying, yelling, lashing out at people, sometimes violence, and they seem more stereotypical for autism. Shutdowns are more inward. They're like silent meltdowns. While it can include things like crying, it's usually less noticeable. They can include the person losing their voice and ability to speak in a verbal shutdown, like I mentioned earlier. The two are generally caused by similar things, they just have different outcomes. They will vary from person to person and day to day. What people tend to mix up are meltdowns and tantrums. Tantrums are a result from not getting what you want. Like a little 2-year-old going shopping with their mum, and while they're in the car they see a toy they want, but the parent says no, and then they start crying. Tantrum. But a meltdown is much deeper than that. It isn't the autistic person trying to be rude, selfish, childish, or overdramatic. They are too stressed, overwhelmed, and overstimulated to cope. It's commonly known that autistic people struggle to understand social cues. While this can be true, remember that autism is a spectrum. It can go two ways. Some autistic people, like myself, are actually hyper-aware of socializing and have social anxiety. How lovely. But others struggle to understand facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, and other similar cues. Social demands can also be quite stressful. Having to reply to people and go out can feel like a lot. But again, remember, it's I'm waiting for you to say it, a spectrum. So while some may be introverted, others may be extroverted. When I talk about autistic struggles, I really do mean it broadly. Not everyone will struggle with the same thing. Other social difficulties can include small talk, oversharing, general communication difficulties interfering, also knowing the right words to say, and understanding sarcasm. Sometimes autistic people may seem rude, we might not be making eye contact, we might be fidgeting lots, but usually an autistic person isn't trying to purposely be rude. Things that may seem socially inappropriate might not be so obvious to us. Another part of autism is needing routine, structure, and order. Autistics typically thrive on routine and love having things planned out. Of course, not everyone is the same and will benefit from the same things, but that's generally how it is. Change, and especially unexpected change, can be quite confronting and overwhelming for us. Having order can be a comfort, and if possible, having things planned out or having extra time to process can be extremely helpful. Whoa, I just threw some big words at you. Interception refers to struggling to understand inner bodily cues, like hunger or pain.
Hi, Editing Anna here. So I didn't explain this well at all, but interoception is actually your awareness to those bodily cues. So autistic people often have poor interoception because they struggle to identify those cues. And it's not only hunger and pain, it can also be thirst, temperature, needing to go to the toilet, and a wide range of other things. One silly example is wearing long sleeve shirts when it's like a really hot summer day. So interoception basically just refers to understanding and interpreting those inner bodily cues, and poor interoception is not being able to understand them, aka what most autistic people experience.
And alexithymia refers to the inability to recognize and process your emotions. Both of these things are common for neurodivergents, not just autistics, and they can both show up in different ways. Like with interoception, you might not be able to feel those internal bodily cues because they might not show up well for you, or you might feel like everything is so much that it's confusing to differentiate. Comorbidities refer to the co-occurrence of other disabilities or disorders. Autistic people are actually much more likely to struggle with mental health or other further things. If you're autistic, chances are you also have something like ADHD, selective mutism, OCD, anxiety, depression, dyslexia, PDA, the list could go on. Again, I've got a lot of lists in this video. Executive dysfunction is something a lot of neurodivergents struggle with. Before, I mentioned struggling to process change. Well, it can also be difficult for us to process tasks like homework or cleaning up a space. Executive dysfunction refers to difficulties with the brain's management system. Sometimes it can be hard for us to break down tasks. With that also comes spoons. No, not an actual spoon. I guess I'll just have to get rid of these now. Spoons are essentially another word for mental energy. It refers to the spoon theory, a metaphor explaining the limited energy that people with chronic illness and disabilities like autism have for daily tasks.
Every task costs spoons, and not everyone will have the same amount of spoons to start off with, and not every task will take the same amount of spoons from a person. Say you wake up with 7 spoons. Getting out of bed might take 1 spoon. Then getting ready for the day might take 2 spoons. Then actually handling the day and going to school or work might take the rest of your spoons. And then there's no spoons left. If you have no spoons, there is no spawning in another spoon. No spoons is no spoons, and that means no mental energy. For autistic people, things can take more spoons. So what might take only 1 spoon for a neurotypical person might take 4 spoons for an autistic person. Not to mention the impact of sensory stimuli and socializing, communication and masking and all of that stuff. That also takes spoons.
When you've used too many spoons, it can lead to autistic burnout. And to lightly touch on autistic burnout, it's pretty similar to regular burnout. Instead of being centered around depression or an overload of tasks upon you, it's more exhaustion from autism-related things like masking and having to live in a neurotypical centered world. Masking is when an autistic person tries to hide their autistic traits to appear normal, or as you should now know the word, neurotypical. This can include holding back stims, forcing eye contact, and so much more. It is mainly harmful, and actually extremely harmful. It is definitely more bad than good. It is exhausting to mask, and it can lead to autistic burnout. The reason so many autistics go undiagnosed and fly under the radar is because of masking. We seem so put together or normal and maybe just a little quirky but fine. It's not really like that inside though. Many of us are told, you don't look autistic, but autism does not have a look, alright? You cannot look autistic. And you may think our autism is mild, but that's because
You are experiencing our autism mildly.
masking is a trauma response. It's from built up expectations. Some of us develop the habit from being told straight to our face that our autistic traits aren't accepted, but it can also be subconsciously built in and reinforced. It honestly sucks. Now you know a bit more about the traits of autism. Traits, not symptoms. Let me give you a quick overview on the cause of autism. I'm going to be honest with you here, no one really knows the exact cause of ASD. What we do, however, know is what doesn't cause it. Despite what you may have heard, autism is not caused by vaccines, bad parenting, too much screen time, not eating the right foods, taking paracetamol while pregnant, or not socializing enough. In reality, autism can be caused by genetics and brain development, so far from what scientists have found. There are many different genes out there that can cause autism, so that is a big factor. But it's also important to know that everyone's brain is different, so it's common sense that everyone's brain would have developed differently, and for some people, that means being autistic. Autism starts before someone is born, so it is certainly not something that can happen later on in life. There's still lots and lots to learn with countless other potential causes, but that's what we know so far. Adding on to that, you can't cure autism. Cure? Whatever. Autism is a lifelong disability. No certain therapies, diets, discipline, medications, or amount of time will get rid of autism. An autistic child will become an autistic adult. As I've mentioned before, autism is a disability. Around and about, you might see posts or even merch that says, autism isn't a disability, it's a superpower. Or, autism isn't a disability, it's a different ability. Most of those posts or quotes are made by neurotypicals that feel bad for us autistics and want to highlight some good out of having autism. But instead of showing some of the good, they try and make it seem all good.
Which, quite frankly, it's not.
Autism is a disability, and it wouldn't be in the DSM-5 if it wasn't. What people miss is that disability isn't a bad word. It shouldn't be taboo to talk about disabilities, and it shouldn't be something to be ashamed of either. Don't get me wrong, autism has good sides, definitely. Stimming is amazing, and so is being able to have such intense interests. But it's important to keep a balance. It's not all good and it's not all bad. The term Asperger's still floats around today, and if you're wondering how it relates to autism, let me explain. So basically, there was this dude called Hans Asperger, an Austrian physician in the 1940s. He came up with the term Asperger's syndrome. People with Asperger's generally had a high IQ, but struggled with social interaction and had intense interests. In nowadays terms, Asperger's is the equivalent of high-functioning autism. Sounds alright so far, right? Well, plot twist. Turns out this dude was actually associated with the Nazis and World War II and assisted in the murder of many disabled children. He basically decided that the more severely autistic or low-functioning children were not worthy of life, which is stupid and not okay. Thankfully, the term Asperger's has been removed from the DSM-5. Asperger's and autism overlapped, so they got rid of one and decided to keep autism instead. So you can't get diagnosed with Asperger's anymore. But Asperger's and autism are essentially the same thing. Some autistics still prefer to use Asperger's, but most don't and don't want to be associated with this guy, and I'm sure you can see why. I could go on longer, but I have other topics to cover, so if you want to know more, there's a really great video that Chloe Hayden has made. It'll be linked up here, or somewhere. Also, do you like my board? When Asperger's finally got removed, it got replaced with the functioning labels. High functioning and low functioning. And while some may still like to use these labels, they hurt us autistics a whole heap. It puts an unfair label on us on how capable we are, when actually capabilities fluctuate and change. Then boom, another set of labels. The support levels. These are supposed to indicate how much support we need. Level 1 requiring the least and level 3 requiring the most. If you know me, you know I hate these labels. These support levels are still used today, but that doesn't mean that they're not harmful. I can definitely see why you might need to estimate how much support someone needs. There is absolutely no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is putting a set label on someone that can't change, because that can be really damaging. Some days we'll need more support, some days we'll need less. They're basically just the equivalent of the functioning labels, level 1 being high functioning, level 3 being low functioning. If these levels could change based on how the person is doing that day, then I would totally agree with them. However, they don't. But hey, aside from my feelings, these are the levels that are currently used today in school systems and around the world. For such a long time, the puzzle piece symbol has been used to represent autism. And while it can be great for some people, there are some debates about whether or not the autistic community actually finds it helpful. The main symbol I'd suggest you use is the rainbow infinity sign, but some other commonly loved ones are the gold infinity sign and the autism creature. If you want to know what all the drama is about with the puzzle piece symbol, it basically insinuates that autistic people have a piece missing. It's also used by Autism Speaks, a very controversial organisation that is widely hated by the autistic community. Don't worry, I won't go into a huge lecture on it, but if you want to know more, then I suggest you go on a research tangent. In the end, most autistics prefer the infinity sign better, so if you're neurotypical and watching this, then that is the way to go. But it really does just depend on personal preference. So ask the autistic person in your life which one they prefer. Congratulations, you have officially reached the end of this very long video. And you now hopefully know a little bit more about autism. I tried to include most of the important things, but if I missed something, then please let me know in the comment section down below. But also, if you just want to add your own perspective, then I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any questions after watching this video, then I would be more than happy to answer, and so would other autistics in the comments as well. Seriously though, thanks so much for watching, it means the world to me. Remember that you are loved, and go drink some water. Bye!